So you've got a great idea and you want to start up a company because you think this is awesome. I'm going to make a ton of money with this. Okay, well, great. But now what? Well, Claudia Losey is a securities lawyer with Boughton Law, CKNW's new on-air legal analyst, and joins us now to talk more about this. Hi, Claudia.
Hi, Simi.
Is that the kind of thing that you get confronted with fairly regularly?
Yes, because most startup companies need money to launch their business or move it along, do research and development. So they're often out looking for money.
And what is that like? And what side do you look at here? Do you look at the people looking to place money, or do you generally represent people who are hoping to find investors?
Usually the companies that are finding money, because the securities laws apply to any company, private or public, raising money by offering their shares, by selling their shares. So even private companies need to know what those rules are when they're seeking funds to expand their business or, launch a product.
So you can't just have somebody want to invest in your company. There are a lot of rules that go with that.
Yeah, you can't sell your shares to the public without a prospectus. It's a very long legal document that has to be reviewed by the Securities Commissions and cleared. So the only way to avoid a prospectus is to sell your shares to people that fit within an exemption, like your close personal friends and family members and close business associates.
Those are usually, it sounds to me like the first people that you hit up for money when you think you've got a great idea. Isn't that usually the way that goes?
Yeah. You go to your family and then you go to your friends and there's a pool that ever widens if you need a lot of money.
Can that be tricky though?
Yes, it can, because if you're bringing in people that are really close to you and things don't go as people expect, then it can affect your relationship in a negative way.
Is it better to work all that out, like to have legal documents for all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it sure is. And one of the things to have would be a shareholders agreement, even with your family, because it'll deal with things like what kind of say shareholders have in what the board wants to do, what happens if a shareholder dies, what happens to profit in the company. Is it taken out with dividends, paid to the shareholders. So you really want to, it is. You need to figure out those relationships soon after they become shareholders.
I'm betting, though, a lot of people who are starting up companies don't necessarily think about that because they're probably so obsessed with the product and getting things up and running.
Yeah, and even if they do know they should have a shareholders agreement, quite often it goes on the back burner. They may not want to spend money on the legal cost of that right away because they need money for other purposes.
Interesting. Okay. And what is the most popular type of investing right now, would you say, in terms of people looking for financing?
Well, usually people once they've exhausted their family and friends, then they need to look for people that have a high net worth or net income. They're minimum thresholds. So these are people that are generally more sophisticated. And it's great because they might give you more money, but it's also not so great because they're going to really take a look at your company and your business.
Yeah, that's not always great, right?
Yeah, and then you have to provide them, that kind of shareholder with lots of information on an ongoing basis. Because if they're sophisticated, they're going to want to keep their finger on the pulse and see how you're doing.
Right. I could see that. It's not always easy if you are looking for some money for your company. We'll talk more about that when we come back. We're talking about raising money for your business endeavor, whatever that may be. And Claudia Losey is with us, a securities lawyer with Boughton Law, that is CKNW's on-air legal analyst for 2015. And Claudia, I have a question here from Justin. And Justin has emailed me and said, how do I get someone else to produce my product and pay me a royalty? Is that a common situation that people find themselves in?
It is, particularly with technology, whether it's trade secrets or patents. If the owner of the technology doesn't have the funds to develop it himself, then he can license that technology or sell it to another company that has the money to develop it and launch it, and then the original owner or the licensor can receive a royalty in cash out of either gross sales or net profits, and just sit back and let somebody else run it.
That does sound like something you'd really definitely need a lawyer for to write that up, though.
That's for sure.
Get everything in writing.
Yes, exactly.
We were talking about angel investing. What exactly is that?
An angel investor is somebody that you bring on a little later after your business has become more established, they will do a lot of due diligence before they agree to invest. Angels are very sophisticated, and they like to invest in startups because they can take on the risk. They know they can lose, possibly all of their money, but they see potential, and they might even help you develop your business. They do want an exit. They want to be able to liquidate, or they want to get out at some point because they're there to kickstart the company.
Is there often a disconnect between the investor and perhaps the people involved in the company that needs money? Because you're dealing with savvy people who, as you said, want to get their money in and out. Company thinks that their investor is buying into their vision. Can that often lead to some trouble?
It sure can, particularly if the business objectives aren't met. So part of what the angel investor wants to see is, what's your plan?
Yeah.
And what do you need to achieve, and how much money do you need, and when will you achieve it?
And better start achieving it.
Yeah, and if you don't, then we're going to be really mad. And the whole relationship could fall apart, and even lawsuits can start depending on the situation.
So how do you deal with this? Like, what are the advantages of going with an angel investor, would you say?
Well, some of the advantages are they can help you with your business. They can provide management expertise. They can make introductions. These are people that are possibly interested. They might even take a board position. So it's that ongoing relationship that can be really helpful to the business.
Okay, what are the disadvantages?
The disadvantages are that you have to keep them informed. You have to probably provide them with financial statements. They need to see the financial information going on. They're hands-on. They're not just sitting there as a passive investor necessarily.
So we talked about angel investing, but what other types of investing are there?
Well, short of being an angel that comes in later, you could sell shares to a high net worth or high income individual or company, and they could be more of a passive investor. They probably will want to be in a shareholders agreement, but they're kind of the one step before the angel investor, and after you've exhausted your family and friends as sources of investment.
So always exhaust your family and friends first.
I think so, because they know you well. They trust you. They really want to get behind you. They're supportive. And and quite often it's an easy way to bring in some money.
So if you're going to get someone to invest in your company or your idea, do you always have to be an incorporation, like incorporated? Do you have to have shares? Do you have to have a prospectus?
Yeah, well, not a prospectus, because you can issue securities to people that fit within categories where they don't need a prospectus. But it is best to incorporate and issue shares. There are lots of reasons why a company would incorporate, and one of them is to protect the owners from personal liability for the debts of the company. And tax reasons, there are lots of reasons why you would incorporate and then sell shares through your company.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that in particular and what your responsibility is if you go that route when we come back. We're talking about business investing, and Claudia Losey is our guest, a securities lawyer with Boughton Law. They are CKNW's new on-air legal analyst for 2015. We're not giving out legal advice here, but we're coming up with some great ideas, just giving you a general idea of what this is actually like. We were talking about incorporation, Claudia, and that actually involves quite a bit of responsibility. It's not just a great way to deal with your taxes. You have responsibilities.
Yes, you do. I mean, you have to maintain the company by filing reports. You need to file a tax return. You need a business license. There's more administration to having a company versus a sole proprietorship. But if you're starting to raise money, you should really consider incorporating. It can be a real tax advantage to the owner as well.
Right. But you have a responsibility to the shareholders if you do that too, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Shareholders have the right to elect the members of the board, and they have the right to financial statements. So you do have to answer to your shareholders once you're a corporation.
Okay, so that sounds like it's a bit more work. What is the role of the Securities Commission in all this?
They oversee for example, they oversee the issuance of securities shares by any company, private or public, and they want to make sure you comply with the requirements. And if you don't, then if it comes to their attention, they can investigate and they can sanction you by fining the company, cease trading the company, meaning the company is then precluded from issuing any more shares. And that can fold the company. That can put a nail in the coffin for that business. They can also fine the directors and officers of the company and ban them from the markets.
Do people underestimate how much they should pay attention to this kind of stuff?
They do.
I thought they might. Yeah.
Yeah, quite. It's not infrequently that I get a new client who's already been out there issuing shares improperly. And my job then becomes to deal with the Securities Commission and try to get them out of hot water and get them back on track.
Do they think it's too much paperwork, or do they just not understand?
Both. They may not understand. They may think they can fly under the radar. They may not.
Everybody thinks they can fly under the radar.
They may think, well, it's too much money to do it, to have a bunch of agreements drafted by a lawyer.
Okay, but then as we were joking about in the commercial break, sooner or later, everybody needs a lawyer.
Yeah, especially if you're raising money. You need a lawyer. And,
But you said, what's the market like right now? Is it tough out there trying to raise money for venture capital?
It's tougher than it used to be. The venture capital markets generally, both for private and public companies, is depressed. There's not as much money out there as there used to be. And investors are picky. And partly because they've lost money and partly because they're shrewd. They know what they're doing. And so, some of the startups that really haven't, they think they have a great idea, but it really doesn't translate well into sales or, bringing in revenues. Those companies aren't going to get investment.
Is that, would you say, the case across Canada, or is it particularly just here in Vancouver?
It's across Canada, but most of the investment money is raised in Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, the big cities. The investors come from all over Canada. But it is hitting Vancouver pretty hard.
I wonder why that is. Like, is it because it's a particular area, or what's going on?
Well, I think people are considering other investments. They're going to their brokers and they're deciding to invest in more, revenue, income investments. They may be aging, and so they're considering their retirement nest egg and don't want to take the risks anymore. It's very risky to invest in a private company because the company may go belly up, and then you've lost your entire investment.
What's the biggest mistake do you think that people make when it comes to doing this kind of thing?
To investing?
Yeah.
Going in not really understanding that they could lose all their money and that there's a real risk that the business won't turn out to be what they expected it to be.
That's where that whole clash the vision comes in too, right? Where you think it's great and then it's not what you thought it was going to be, and who actually owns it. And I can just see that this would just be a very messy situation.
It can be, and it can lead to lawsuits and it can break up family relationships. But for the most part, people who are savvy, they'll take that risk knowingly.
Okay, and you were saying, so if you want to invest in somebody's business that you know about, you go, hey, this is great. What do I need to keep in mind?
As an investor, you want to do your due diligence.
Right.
You want to meet with the management, ask them lots of questions. You want to see financial information, business plans. You really want to get that information. You would get that information in a prospectus, but in this situation, we're not talking about a prospectus. We're talking about people that either are close enough they don't need that information, they already have it, or they know how to get it.
So then it's fair to go to a company to say, okay, like, I want to see your operations, open up everything to me. Like, how far back in the books should you say you want to look at? 2, 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would go back at least 2 years if that's how long the company's been up and running. And, you want to see, doing thorough due diligence would mean, well, let me look at your business relationships with manufacturers, customers. Let me see your operation. Let me come down to your place of business and see exactly what you're doing.
It's like you're hiring somebody. So you really want to get all your references and all of that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
What is the most popular type of businesses, do you think, these days that are getting invested in? Is it tech stuff?
Yeah, tech, green energy, biomedical, these are sort of the startups that we usually see in Vancouver, and social media.
Are we known for all that
software.
kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean the Pacific Northwest and even California is well known as a place, as a place to try to raise money and advance startup companies.
Are we at a bit of a disadvantage here in Vancouver because there is California right there, and Toronto probably sucks up a lot of money as well?
Yes, I mean that's true. There's less money, I would think, here than in Toronto in terms of the bigger investors.
Right.
And with a California-based company, they probably don't want Canadian investors at all.
No, just try getting in there. They
Yeah.
they probably do. Well, it sounds like there's lots of opportunity out there if people do want to take it.
Yeah, you just need to know how to find it, and connections are very important.
And do your homework.
And be prepared to present yourself to a potential investor. Have a presentation, have a business plan, have some financial information, and be well spoken about it, and be prepared to ask questions.
I think you should be coaching people to do that. Claudia, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
That is Claudia Losey, the securities lawyer with Boughton Law. And Boughton Law is our new on-air legal analyst here at CKNW for 2015. And hopefully, you know what? A lot of companies out there looking for money these days. It's not always easy to do that either. So thank you very much, Claudia, for that. We have lots more still to talk about. And we were talking about weddings, how much you spent on your wedding. Let me know. simi@cknw.com. And don't forget about our listener line, 604-331-2771. The news is next.